These were the dinners that kept Americans fed when speed and thrift mattered more than show. In early 20th century kitchens, lunch was often prepared by one person, for one person with little money and little time. The recipes in this video are not curiosities. They are records of survival, routine, and quiet resilience. Each dish was trusted by older Americans who cooked alone and depended on simplicity. Today, these meals are fading from memory. If they disappear, we lose proof of how ordinary people endured daily life. Stay with this video to recover forgotten lunches from American kitchen history. Fried cornmeal mush was a dependable lunch for Americans who cooked alone and counted every penny. In the early 20th century, this dish mattered because it turned a few spoonfuls of cornmeal into lasting nourishment. It fed aging parents, hired hands, and widows without ceremony. The title promises speed and thrift, and this recipe delivered both, day after day. Cornmeal mush began as a pot of boiled cornmeal, water, and salt, stirred slowly until thick. Cooks poured the mush into shallow pans and left it to cool overnight. By morning it was firm enough to slice. Those slices were fried in lard or bacon drippings until the edges browned and the center stayed soft. Nothing was wasted, and nothing was rushed. This lunch appeared across the Midwest and South because cornmeal was cheap, shelf-stable, and familiar. Rural households relied on it when cash was scarce and stores were distant. For older Americans living alone, the recipe required little strength and no special tools. A single pan and a steady hand were enough to produce warmth and fullness. Fried mush was served plain or with milk poured over the top. Some added a dusting of sugar, while others preferred salt. These choices reflected habit rather than indulgence. The goal was sustenance, not variety. This plate carried the memory of shared tables, even when eaten in silence. Cookbooks from the period listed cornmeal mush as reliable fare, often noted beside eggs and bread, because it could be prepared once, reheated easily, and depended on ingredients already kept in most kitchens across rural American households nationwide. Cornmeal mush endured because it respected limits. It honored time, money, and energy. As this video continues, the next recipe reveals another quiet lunch that met the same needs with different ingredients and the same resolve. Creamed eggs on toast offered comfort and economy to Americans eating alone. This lunch mattered because it transformed a few eggs and milk into a filling meal that felt complete. In boarding houses and small homes, it proved that simplicity could still feel nourishing and intentional. The dish began with hard-cooked eggs, chopped fine and set aside. Butter was melted in a pan, flour stirred in, and milk added slowly to form a smooth sauce. The eggs returned to the pan, warming gently without haste. The mixture was spooned over toasted bread and served immediately. Eggs were widely available and affordable in early 20th century America. Many households kept chickens, even in town. Milk and bread were daily staples, already present in kitchens that planned carefully. This recipe allowed older Americans to cook once and eat well without waste or strain. Creamed eggs appeared in home economics manuals and community cookbooks as suitable fare for invalids and elders. The texture was soft, the flavor mild, and the preparation forgiving. It required attention, not strength. That mattered for cooks working with limited energy. This lunch was eaten quietly at small tables, often beside a window or stove. It carried familiarity rather than excitement. The warmth of the sauce and toast provided reassurance during long afternoons. Meals like this supported independence when help was scarce. Creamed eggs on toast endured because it balanced thrift with dignity. It respected the cook and the eater equally. This recipe reminded solitary diners that care and routine could still shape daily life, even when meals were simple, budgets were strict, and the kitchen felt quieter than it once had during aging years alone at home. As this series continues, the next forgotten lunch shows how another humble ingredient was stretched to meet the same daily needs. Potato cakes sustained Americans who needed a hot lunch without expense. This recipe mattered because it reused leftovers and rewarded careful planning. In early 20th century kitchens, wasted food signaled failure. Potato cakes turned yesterday's supper into today's strength. The process began with cold mashed potatoes saved from the night before. Cooks mixed in a little flour, salt, and sometimes an egg. The mixture was shaped into small patties and laid gently into a pan of hot fat. Each cake browned slowly, forming a crisp surface and a soft center. Potatoes were reliable, filling, and widely grown across northern and rural regions. Sellers stored them through winter, making them dependable when markets were distant. For seniors living alone, this dish required no fresh purchases and little effort. A single pan and steady heat were sufficient. Cookbooks from the period praised potato cakes for thrift and order. They were listed as luncheon fare, suitable for children and elders alike. The recipe assumed patience rather than speed. Turning the cakes too soon ruined them. Waiting taught restraint and rewarded care. These cakes were often served plain, with salt, or with a spoon of gravy saved from meat. Some ate them with milk or stewed fruit. Each choice reflected habit, not novelty. The purpose remained nourishment. Prepared this way, the meal cooled well and reheated without loss. That reliability mattered for solitary schedules. Lunch could wait, return to the stove, and still provide warmth, fullness, and reassurance during long, quiet afternoons. Potato cakes carried memory as much as calories. They reminded cooks that planning mattered and that nothing useful should be discarded. As this video moves forward, the next lunch reveals another way Americans stretched staples into dependable meals when time, money, and companionship were limited for those living alone each day then. Milk toast was served when strength was limited and simplicity was required. This lunch mattered because it fed Americans who needed warmth without effort. In early 20th century homes, it signaled care for those living quietly alone. The recipe used stale bread, milk, butter, and salt. Bread was toasted lightly, then broken into a shallow bowl. Milk was heated slowly, never boiled, and poured over the bread. Butter melted into the surface, softening every edge. Milk toast appeared in hospitals, boarding houses, and private kitchens. It was recommended for elders because it was gentle and predictable. The dish required attention rather than force. A steady hand and patient heat prevented scorching. Dairy farming made milk widely available across much of the country. Bread was baked weekly or purchased cheaply. This recipe depended on ingredients already present. For seniors living alone, that reliability reduced strain and waste. Cookbooks listed milk toast as a proper luncheon or evening meal. The language was plain and instructional. There was no emphasis on pleasure. The goal was comfort and nourishment during ordinary days. Milk toast was eaten slowly. It warmed the body and quieted hunger without heaviness. The dish allowed aging Americans to remain independent in their own kitchens. It respected limited energy and steady habits. When eaten alone, milk toast carried memory. It recalled childhood tables and earlier care. The softness of the meal mirrored the rhythm of later life. Served at noon or dusk, it filled quiet kitchens with steam, routine, and reassurance, proving that small meals could still sustain dignity during solitary seasons of later life. This lunch endured because it met people where they were. It asked little and gave enough. As this series continues, the next recipe shows another way Americans relied on modest ingredients to sustain themselves through solitary days. Sardine sandwiches offered protein and thrift to Americans eating alone at midday. This lunch mattered because it turned a small tin of fish into lasting nourishment. In the early 20th century, canned sardines were affordable, shelf-stable, and widely distributed. They appeared in grocers across towns where fresh meat was costly or unreliable. For older Americans living alone, this mattered. The preparation required no stove beyond light toasting and no tools beyond a knife. Cooks mashed sardines with a fork, added salt or pepper, and spread the mixture on bread. Some included a squeeze of lemon if it was on hand. The sandwich was eaten open-faced or folded, depending on habit. Canned fish gained popularity after improved preservation methods expanded national distribution. Rail transport allowed sardines to reach inland communities year-round. This reliability suited seniors who planned meals carefully and avoided waste. One tin could provide more than one meal. Home economics texts described sardine sandwiches as sensible luncheon fare. They emphasized protein, economy, and ease of digestion. The tone was practical, not indulgent. These lunches supported independence during aging years. The meal was filling without heaviness and required no extended standing. It fit into quiet routines shaped by weather, energy, and habit. Eaten alone, it still carried intention. Sardine sandwiches endured because they respected limits. They delivered nourishment quickly and predictably. This lunch asked for balance rather than variety. It allowed older Americans to eat well without drawing attention or expense. Prepared at midday, it kept hunger controlled through long afternoons. Such meals reveal how solitude and self-reliance shaped American foodways. As this series moves forward, the next forgotten lunch reveals another modest dish that sustained Americans who cooked alone, proving how ordinary ingredients preserved routine, dignity, and endurance during early 20th century daily life quietly. These 10 forgotten lunches reveal more than recipes. They reveal a way of life shaped by necessity, care, and quiet resilience. Each dish tells the story of Americans who cooked for themselves with limited resources, relying on thrift, patience, and routine. They remind us that nourishment was measured not in spectacle, but in warmth, fullness, and continuity. As these meals fade from memory, we risk losing the stories they carried of independence, habit, and dignity in solitary kitchens. Explore these recipes, preserve them, and share them. In remembering, we honor the everyday cooks who shaped American food history.